This video is going to show you how to make a crown from the beginning to the end. We're going to walk through all the clinical and lab steps. The first step in making a crown is to grind down the tooth, and we'll call this preparing the tooth for a crown. You'll take a diamond burr and start to grind away some of the surfaces that are on the top, which is the occlusal surface, as well as circumferentially around the tooth. The important thing here is to really make sure that your margin, or where the crown will meet the tooth structure, is extremely smooth, as well as not having any sharp points or line angles. So here you can see that we have real smooth margins and a crown that has been, or a tooth that has been reduced to the proper dimensions. Once that's accomplished, you want to make a mold of the tooth. So this involves taking a polyvinyl siloxane material, or PVS. And here you can see this is a light body consistency, which just means that it flows a little bit better to capture all the surface detail. And in the tray, what we have is a medium body consistency that provides the rigidity that's needed for an accurate impression. And as it sets, the two materials will blend together. Once the impression is made, you're going to want to take some gypsum, some type 4 gypsum, and vacuum mix that, and go ahead and you'll pour that into the impression so that you have a stone replica of what the mouth looks like. So you'll go around and on a vibrator make sure that the stone fills your impression. So this is a Pindexing machine, and as you can see, as you depress the platform, you can see a drill come through from the bottom, and the laser shines in the area that you're drilling the hole. So you want a hole over or under your prep tooth, as well as in the segments surrounding it. Now you'll take a rod and stick in some super glue, and you'll be able to insert that rod into the holes that you created. Notice that the rods have two rods in them, and that prevents the pieces from rotating. And now you're going to see that the plastic sleeves are placed over, along with the rubber stopper, so that stone doesn't flow onto the rods as you pour your base. So you're going to add some separator to the cast so that the base stone doesn't stick to your cast. And you can see the application of the stone base into a model former, and the cast with your prep is going to be embedded into it, and we'll let that set. So after the stone sets, you'll be able to pull off the rubber stoppers, and you can see that the base separates from your prepped cast. And this is why we have the plastic sleeves on there, so you can take it in and out. Now at this point, we want to separate the die, or the prep tooth, from the rest of the model. So you'll take a saw blade and cut interproximally. So now that your pieces can all individually come out. So the next step is to mount your cast onto an articulator. And what we've done here is index your cast with a burr in 3 separate points and put a little Vaseline in there. And the purpose of that is if the cast ever falls off, you're able to re-index the cast to your mounting. So we've attached a mounting plate to the articulator, and the articulator simulates the opening and closing of your patient's mouth. So you'll take some plaster and mix that up, and you can place that onto your cast, and as well as your mounting plate. Ensure to get some of that plaster into those little grooves that you see there. So as you close down the articulator, clean up any plaster that may have leaked over the sides. And once that sets, you'll mix up a second layer to now fill in the gap. And you can take some wet fingers as it starts to set to help smooth things out, so there's less finishing that you have to do. So the next step is to mount your mandibular cast against the maxillary cast in the proper orientation. So what we're doing here is heating up some compound and placing it onto the two casts, and then you're going to take a rod and place that on the compound and wait for it to cool. As it cools, it'll secure those two in place. Alternatively, instead of a rod, you can also use a tongue depressor that you've cut down to size. So since we have a really stable occlusion, we're able to hand articulate the two casts together, which just means holding it in place with your two hands while you're mounting. After you secured the two casts together, the next step is to add plaster to your mandibular casts to secure the lower cast to your mounting plate. So that procedure is repeated with plaster. And again, make sure to get enough plaster into the grooves of your mounting plate so it doesn't slide off easily after it sets. So once it sets, you can remove the rods and also remove the wax spacer that was put there just so you don't cover up the openings of the rods. So you can examine your cast and make sure that the proper occlusal relationship is preserved during your mounting procedure. So once you're done mounting, the next step is to trim your die, which means removing the stone around your preparation. So once the die is trimmed, you want to mark the margin or where the crown will meet the tooth with a red pencil, and this just helps you see the junction just a little bit more clearly. Next step is to paint the die with a die spacer, and the purpose of this is to make room for your cement when you eventually seat the crown in the mouth. And after that, you're going to paint a little bit of lubrication onto the die because eventually we're going to add wax to it, and at some point you're going to want to separate the wax from the stone die. So here you can see that the die has been dipped into the wax to form a coping, and now you're going to layer on wax into the form of a tooth. So you'll go ahead and sequentially build up the tooth and build up the cusps and the marginal ridges and start to shape that to make it look like the tooth. So studying your dental anatomy and knowing where the grooves and ridges and your inclines go is going to be important. And one thing to note too is you want to check the occlusion and adjust the wax contour appropriately. So the neighboring teeth and the crown itself should have contact on them. So here's the crown fully waxed up, and once that's done, you're going to attach what we call a sprue onto the tooth, and this basically creates a channel for the metal to flow into to form our crown when we actually cast the crown into metal. So this is also wax that goes onto a crucible former, and that big red piece of wax acts as a reservoir for the molten metal to flow from and eventually flow into that space that the crown occupies. So we'll put a little ring around there, and we're going to fill this space with what we call investment material. So the type of investment material we're using is a phosphate bonded material, and basically we'll mix that up and vacuum mix it. It's important to not have any voids or air bubbles, otherwise those voids will be incorporated into the crown that you make. So we'll gently place the investment material around the crown, and you want to make sure that this coats the crown well, and that again you don't trap any voids or air bubbles in there. So we want to make sure that you get a nice smooth mix, and you'll go ahead and pour the rest of the investment material so it covers up the entire surface of the sprue and the crown. So you'll go ahead and let that set, and once it's set you can remove the bottom of that crucible former, and what you'll see is that on the bottom of that investment material is wax, and that creates the opening in which our metal will eventually flow through. So at this point you're going to put that investment material with the wax pattern in an oven, and it's actually going to burn out the wax. So anywhere that was wax is now open space or air. So as that's burning out, what you're going to do is load up this casting apparatus, and this is sometimes known as a lost arm casting machine, and what you want to do is wind it up and heat up your metal until it melts. So you want that metal to be molten so that as you sling the metal, it's going to flow into the space that was created by the wax that was embedded in the investment material. And remember, this wax pattern has now been burnt out. So the space in that investment material has the shape of the crown and the sprue, and you can see the technician winding up the casting arm and making sure that that metal is well molten before letting it go, and under centripetal force the molten wax, or the molten metal, is now slung into that void that was created. So you'll let the metal cool and you'll divest the crown, which means just breaking off the investment material. So you can very carefully break that off, and then some of the finer little pieces that are stuck in there can be removed with a sandblaster. So you can see just the investment material slowly disappearing with that sandblast under high pressure. So once you've got that investment material cleaned off, you can now cut off the sprue, and you will have recovered your metal crown. So it goes from that wax to a void, and then you sling the metal, and that metal cools to get the shape of the crown. So you'll go through your finishing and polishing procedures to shine it up. You'll put it back onto your cast to make sure that your interproximal and occlusal contacts are appropriate. And once you've done that, then the crown will be ready to shine up and package up for delivery for you to seat into the patient's mouth. So that's our gold crown.